Let's welcome our next guest. He is our keynote speaker, Mr. Brent Cook, all the way from southern Utah in the US of A. He is an exploration geologist. He's an economic geologist. So that means he knows about the dirt, he knows about the coin. He's also the founder and contributor to Exploration Insights, and you can find that at explorationinsights.com. And he's been living, or did live, in Australia for 6 years. So let's call him an honorary Australian. That's what I'd like to say anyway. Hey, Brent, good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the virtual Gold Conference.
Yeah, g'day. Good to see you.
G'day. Well, yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad.
Been a while.
Brent, you and I have met each other over the years at various conferences. And the one thing I do remember is, I think it was at a Sprott conference in Canada. And you were really good because you took some of us around, and especially for someone like me, I'm not a geologist by background, but you took us around and you gave us a much better understanding of some of the companies, what to look for. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do people interpret what's going on? Because sitting here in Australia, there's a lot of gold and a few silver companies out there. They're all putting out news releases. They're all talking about things. And for those that don't understand geology or are not geologists, it can be confusing. But before we start with that, if you can just give us a little bit of background about how you got to become an exploration and an economic geologist, and a little bit about Exploration Insights and what that does.
Right. Well, I've been doing this my whole life, at least since I graduated from university back in 78, 79. I've lived in like 5 different countries. I've done and reviewed projects in close to 70 countries now.
Wow.
Most of my work has been involved in earlier stage exploration projects. I've mostly been independent, a consultant, but I have done everything from grassroots exploration right through to bank audits, feasibility studies, the privatization of CVRD in Brazil and ZCCM in Zambia. I was involved in those as just a contributor. I guess in 1980, I guess it was, my wife and I, we kind of traveled across the South Pacific, landed in Australia after a year flat broke, and there's a boom going on. So that was good. Got a job there and stuck around for 6 years, mostly working North Queensland and partly in New South Wales. Did a lot of work in New Guinea. Came back to Central America, the Caribbean, worked through there looking for gold. Jumped down to Brazil, back to the States, and then in '97, I came on as Rick Rule's analyst with now Sprott, used to be Global Resources. And we did quite well then. Timing was good. We turned a $14 million investment into 200-something million over the course of 4 or 5 years.
Nice.
Timing was key there, really. And then I started up Exploration Insights, the newsletter, and have since brought on and sold it to Joe Mazumdar, who now writes the letter, and I work with him as an advisor, I guess, and we discuss things, and basically I'm just investing my own money now. And I'm also on the board of one Australian listed company, GBM Resources.
Yeah, we'll talk about, sadly, GBM, I didn't reach out to them because we got really, really full. We've got a packed agenda today. So unfortunately, GBM aren't on this one today, but we're going to be doing a real live, yes, an in-person conference in October here in Sydney. I don't know whether you're going to be able to allowed back into Australia then, but you never know, Brent. You never know.
But hopefully GBM I'm fully vaccinated, so bring me in.
You're all vaccinated. Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of experience there, Brent, and a lot of the companies that we're talking with today. I mean, we've just heard from Mistral. They've got their project in Mexico, but they're all ASX listed companies. What I want to find out from you, though, is you once said geology does matter. I'd really like to just expand that a little bit. Why does geology matter?
Right. Well, that actually came about. I was a speaker at prospector developers, PDAC, and the newsletter writer before me got up on stage and says, geology doesn't matter. He had a crystal ball and he walked through how he looks at charts and makes these bets. And so I got up right after and said, actually, geology does matter. I went through to explain why it does, because, really we're looking for very unique geologic settings that form economic ore deposits. I mean, honestly, an economic ore deposit is a very unique thing on Earth. Newmont did a study years ago, but they estimated that 1 out of every 10,000 prospects, just prospects, turn into a mine.
1 out of how many?
10,000.
Okay, so I'm going to throw something in here. That
includes all the crap out there, right?
So why should we even bother putting our hard-earned cash into anything? If it's, I mean, that's like a lottery.
Well, yeah, but you can rig it. You can. It's easy to screen out 2/3 of the companies out there.
Wow,
that's what we can talk about. And then you get down to the third to the left, and then you go through in more detail. And again, you recognize what works, what doesn't. What are the economics behind what they're looking for? Is the system big enough? Do the people understand it? All those sorts of things. And you can narrow it down quite well. And to be honest, we've done quite well in the newsletter. We almost always beat the index and often beat it by a lot.
Does the newsletter cover projects anywhere in the world, or are you mainly focused on North America, Canada?
We cover projects everywhere in the world. We've got stuff right now from the Congo to Canada to Australia to Peru to Argentina, Nevada, Serbia.
Does jurisdiction matter? You mentioned Congo. I mean, I would look at the Congo and say, geopolitical risk in the Congo must be huge. Why would you?
It is, but the reward is so much bigger. I mean, look what Ivanhoe, Robert Friedland uncovered there. That's, the best copper discovery in at least a decade.
Right.
So the reward's got to be commensurate with the risk.
Okay.
And, you can do things in the Congo. You can get things done. Other places, you just can't get anything, like, I don't know, say California or Venezuela. Those places you really can't do anything.
Right. So going back to that, geology does matter. Let's just finish up on that one. Why is it so jurisdiction, you say if the deposit's big enough, then you take it's the sort of the risk reward. But let's go back to geology matters. In what sense?
If you're investing in call it an exploration stage company or even a mining stage company, it's critical that the people running the project, mining the deposit, understand the geologic setting, understand the controls to the mineralization. Is it a fracture running, fault running into the northwest, or are there a bunch of subsidiary fractures running this way that are actually holding the mineralization? What's the environment? Are we looking at a porphyry copper style thing? Are we looking at a skarn developed on top of a porphyry? Are we looking at an epithermal system up near the surface? Where
Just
are
explain
we?
That for a few of the people that are out there that are scratching their heads right now and going, and I don't want to go into a massive lesson about geology, but just, when you say skarn, when you say certain structures, if you could just unpack that a little bit and why they might be important.
Okay, so most of the deposits along the Pacific Rim, anything associated with a magma body, basically, what happens is the magma comes into the earth. As it cools, it crystallizes. It crystallizes all the scum, if you will, and that's what it really is. Scum kind of comes to the surface. In that scum is where all the metals are. There's water, and that comes to the surface via cracks, hot springs. So something like Yellowstone National Park or New Zealand, Taupo Volcanic Rift, we're seeing the very, very tops of a mineralizing system. So as geologists, you sort of know where you are and how this thing formed, and you should know how to explore it. And that determines how you explore it, and how you mine it. Does that make any more sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot. Yeah, it does. It does make a lot more sense, because I don't want to go too much into the geology, but it's just to try and help those people that are out there that are not geologists, but they are investors. They're looking at gold. Why do you talked copper, but this is a virtual gold conference. Is there and you've got a lot of as you said, you're on the board of GBM. Do you like gold as you're a geologist, you can look at any sort of metals, minerals. What attracts you to gold?
There's something about gold. You hold a nugget, and there's something special, and that's been the case for thousands of years amongst different cultures that are completely separated from each other, and they all came up with the same sort of gold is valuable. So there's something about gold, and in terms of geologic setting, the geologic setting associated with gold deposits is more active and more fun to try and figure out. Really, we're putting together a jigsaw puzzle, almost a mystery, if you will, looking back in time to figure out what happened in order to form this, what might be a gold deposit.
And right now, what are the main things that you look for? Now, I often say to people, when you're looking to put your hard-earned money, funny money as I call it now, into a company, what is it that Brent Cook looks at first and foremost? What are the warning signs? Now, this talk is all about how to interpret news releases, and we're going to get into that as well. But I want to find out, what does Brent Cook look for? What are the warning signs? What are the walk-away signs? And what are the ones where you sit up and go, oh, okay, this looks good because A, B, C?
Yeah, well, that's a real big question, because there's so much that is involved in discovering and developing a mine. It's probably one of the most complicated, series of events that have to happen that involve everything from geology, metallurgy, mineralogy, social, environmental issues, infrastructure, capex. All those things fall into it. But basically, what I look for, number one, is I look at the geology. I guess that's because of what I know. And if the geologic setting and the results to date indicate to me that this company may be onto something economically significant, and hopefully significant enough to attract a major to come in and buy it out, that's what I'm looking for, number one. Is the geology meet my expectations? Does it offer a shot at a real discovery of size and grade? After that, it's the people. Novice, first time around newbies, that's fine by me. Any, good, honest, solid people, I'm there, whether they've had success in the past or not.
Okay.
But there's a lot of shady characters out there, and over a while you get to know them and you get to recognize that in how they present themselves. So, people's probably number two. Share structure is probably number three. And then it comes down to, where's it located, and back to what's the economic realities of this thing. I mean, really, if you're talking to a company, ask them to explain what they're looking for, what it looks like, and what are the economics behind what they're hoping to discover. I mean, if they're after, call it a skarn copper gold system, what are the economics they envision in terms of capex, metallurgy, infrastructure, processing, and mining costs that they're kind of having in the back of their mind in order to know if they're successful or not?
But will they have that at the start? Like,
they better.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know what you're looking for, how are you going to find it?
But how do you know what the economics are going to be? Like, for example, the cost of the extraction of the ore. Do you know that right at the start? I mean,
you've got ballpark. You've got other operations that are in production.
Okay.
So you benchmark it against that. I mean, if I'm looking for a porphyry copper deposit in the Lachlan Fold Belt, I've got lots of lots of places I can gather that information to get a sense, and so should the company.
You mentioned share structure a moment ago. Can you unpack that a little bit for me? What do you mean by share structure? Are you saying, because here in Australia, we have a lot. Yeah, I know it's very different, isn't it? We have lots of shares on issue.
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating in that way in terms of Australia and trying to invest over there in these small companies. But it comes down to who owns the shares, at what price did they get in at, and what are they going to do with those shares? I mean, too often, certainly over here in the US, you see these shell companies rolled up into another company, and there's a big promotion going on. The company will re-drill a few excellent holes that were drilled in the past at least once before, and it gets retail excited. They start buying in, and the guys that are in it, 5 cents when the stock is selling at 50 or 60 cents, are all bailing, and that limits the price appreciation quite a bit. So that's really important. You want your management to be financially invested at a reasonable price.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were buying on market, and I went, "Oh, I like to hear that rather than getting freebies because of various reasons behind it."
Yeah, I think so.
One of the questions that I had was for those people that are starting out. I once saw a chart that you put up, which is sort of the life cycle of junior explorers. Can you talk us through that? Because there are the sort of the peaks and the troughs, aren't there? There are the times where I guess people have lost interest, and mining it's a long game, isn't it? It's not. Or can it be a short game? Because somebody actually said to me, for those people who are just starting out, is it how long do I have to wrap my capital up for? Because and I know right now there's a lot of social media, which is, people are just getting in and out, and they want to make a quick buck.
Mm-hmm. Typically, it's the Lassonde curve. It's something that we've published and I've talked about a lot in writing. And basically, see if I got the direction right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting on the right side for you to see it, right? Okay, you're upside down, right?
Hang on. No, you got to go the other side.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, this is the share price chart. As a company gets started, the share prices are like this. The companies build up management. They go out and stake some projects. They start having some early success, be it soil samples, a few drill holes. People start recognizing this might be a success, and the share price goes up, to a point where either the news starts getting bad. In fact, the project starts to fail, or they go to the stage where, okay, we've defined a resource. Now we've got to put together an economic study, an engineering study, and that's not exciting stuff. And so the share price generally trends down while the company is putting out, really not very interesting news like, I don't know, we got a water permit and we've finished the native title study, those sorts of things, until they get to the point where it's the speculators are gone, and now you've got the true investors coming in who are looking to build a mine, want to be involved in the production scenario. And then it starts rising once the more advanced studies come out, be it a pre-feasibility or feasibility study. Then we start putting economics to it that give it some sort of value, and it'll rise close to that value. So that's why that happens. And I've probably made the most money on this run up and recognizing when things start to go wrong before the crowd and bailing. That's probably where I've made most of my money right there. Sometimes if it's good enough, a major buys it, and that's fantastic. But up on that run up, that's where you got to keep real close track of, are the results meeting expectations? Are they proving the concept?
This is really interesting because I think, and I've made the mistake, and I said earlier that I'm not a geologist by background, but I love gold and I'm learning. I'm always learning. That's why I love bringing these conferences to people, because this is all about learning. It's really interesting what you just spoke about, is keeping an eye on things. So don't be lazy and put your money into a company and hope that the share price will always go on the rise. Although here in Australia, there's been some really good share price appreciation recently.
And based on real discoveries too.
Yeah. So when you're talking about, and for those people out there, let's just talk about pre-feasibility and feasibility studies, the difference between those and why they're important.
All right, the pre-feasibility study is the preliminary economic assessment, PEA. That's what we use over here anyway, in North America. That's your very first look at possible economics, where you just, in theory, try and make a decision as to, can this project work? So you throw in, you've got a resource of some sort, you throw in some very general cost parameters, build a pit or an underground, mine of sorts, rough again, and you make, this thing is plus or minus 50%.
Yeah.
So it's just really ballpark. And it's rare to almost never that you see a negative PEA. And basically, for the most part, those are sales documents.
Yeah.
Okay, and then when you get to the pre-feasibility, they start actually putting in some real numbers, and that gets down to, really, will this work? Can it work? And that gets you plus or minus 30% of what might the outcome be. And then when you get down to the actual feasibility study, you're plus or minus, I believe it is 11%. And that's where you start putting in the hard numbers, like you go out and cost the machinery. You figure out what the mining cost and processing cost per ton. You've got the metallurgy down pat. So the feasibility study is pretty good. But you see a lot of those fail, or I said a number of them fail, because it's all based on a resource, right? Your tons and grade.
Yep. And
too often, if that's not right, it doesn't matter what else happens, because you're building a mine model for a deposit that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
We've seen that blow up a number of times.
Is that blown up because of bad management or?
To some degree, that a bad resource estimate, a bad resource estimator, not enough infill or tight drilling to determine what the real geology is. They may have used the wrong type of methodology, that sort of thing. I mean, you look at a company like Pretium Gold, which is, a big company. I had a lot of issues with their initial resource estimate, which used a funny method of kriging, where in fact it was placing resources, values, where they were not right according to the drill holes. It was a mathematical kind of thing. And anyway, their initial resource estimate, I believe, was 17 grams a ton. Very nice. They're mining about 8 grams.
Oh, wow, that's a big difference.
Big difference, yeah. Another one, Phoenix, Rubicon. That completely blew up because they had the modeling wrong. They didn't have enough in-detailed data to do it properly, and the company or guy that did the resource didn't do it right. So if the resource is wrong, nothing else is going to be right.
Now, this is a bit of a loaded question, Brent, because not everybody is a geologist out there, and people are interested in investing in shares. Is a newsletter like Exploration Insights a good way for those of us that are not geologists, that look at some of these press releases? Seriously, Brent, sometimes I look at them and go, I don't even know where to start. I mean, pretty pictures, lots of drill holes, wouldn't even know how to begin to interpret them. Is there a better way for the non-geologists to, I guess, protect a potential investment in a dud?
I mean, like I said, this is a really complex,
Yeah, I know.
complicated business.
Yeah.
I think it really pays to have someone, if you're a dentist, for instance, it really pays to have someone who you trust that knows the industry to give you some feedback. I think Exploration Insights is pretty darn good. Joe Mazumder's as honest and straight as you can get. We're about investing. It's about what we're buying and selling and avoiding with our money.
Right.
But you're a broker that knows the industry. Your brother, anyone that really knows the industry and you understand how they make their money. I mean, there are a number of newsletters here in the States, at least, that make their money being paid by companies to promote their stocks.
Sure.
That's probably someone you don't want to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's that independent. And when it comes to press releases, I'm sure you've seen your fair share of them. Do you think that they do a good enough job? Do you think they explain things well, or do you think sometimes they do a little bit of a mishmash? And do you think sometimes they don't? Well, first of all, I find some of them are a little bit overspinning.
Yeah. I mean, it runs the gamut, right? Anything from really good to really bad. And one thing really good about the Australian releases is they include most of the backup data, how the samples were taken, and all that stuff. So that is something that we don't get so much here in North America, in Canada. But I think, ideally, in my opinion, a good news release has 2 or 3 paragraphs, real general. This is for the general public. This is what we did. This is what we found. This is what it means. There's companies over here that have started including video clips with the president actually talking it through.
Oh, wow. Okay.
With graphs and everything. After that introduction, there should be a whole technical section that goes through exactly what the geology is, where they drilled. There should be cross sections, long sections, maps, all that stuff, so that anyone who has the background can look through it and come to some sort of conclusion at the end of it. Too many companies don't do that over here, certainly. And then on top of that, there's a lot of tricks you've got to watch for that they throw out there.
Such as?
I thought
what are some of these tricks? That's what we want to know, don't we, ladies and gentlemen? From the man that's been around for quite a number of years, tell us some of these tips, tricks.
I guess one is smearing of grade. What smearing I mean by that grade. Is
smearing of grade.
Yeah, what that means, it's like you've got an interval of gold, call it, 3 centimeters. And it's very high grade. But let's make it simple. We've got 1 meter of 50 grams and within a drill hole of 100 meters. They do, to some degree, and this is an extreme example, but this is what I'm talking about. They can smear that 10 grams over the 100 meters and call it 100 meters of 1 gram.
Got it.
That gives you a completely different concept of what this deposit is. Now that's an extreme example, but I see that quite a bit.
Do you see that in Australian companies, or is that more a North American thing? Because I don't think I've seen that down here.
I've seen it a few times. I can't remember the name of the companies that have done it, but more so in Canada.
Yeah. And
it's died down a bit because I've harped on that for a while and taken a few companies to task on that. And on our website, Exploration Insight, down at the bottom, there's a little drill interval calculator that anyone can use. And you plug in the long interval and the grade and the short interval and the grade. At the bottom, it gives you the residual grade. So in that case that I gave you, 100 meters of 1 gram, including 50 meters of 1 gram, including 1 meter of 50 grams, the residual grade you get is 49 meters of zip.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
that's what that's that thing can show you. That's a great tool to use. And it
Okay.
works on resources too. Just plug in the numbers and see what's left when you pull out the high grade.
So so this is on explorationinsights.com.
Yes, down at the bottom, I think there's a link.
Okay. And so you plug in, just remind us again, you plug in
The long interval and the grade, and then the included or short intervals and the grade. And that subtracts all that out and gives you what is left in the core hole.
wow. Okay.
So that's useful.
That is useful. Brent, when you're doing economic modeling, for example, looking at a deposit, do you use a specific gold price? I mean, the gold price at the moment is a little bit better than it has been over the past couple of months. So it's strengthening a little bit. But does the gold price matter very much? How much of an impact does that have?
Certainly. And this goes out more to people's personal view. I mean, do you think gold's going to go to 2,000 US or to 1,500 US? Well, if you think that, you shouldn't be investing in gold at all. but I'm using, what am I using now? Well, it varies. I can, in the spreadsheet, I can plug whatever number I want in. But I think 1650 US is probably reasonable.
Does that but if you're using 1650, does that mean that a lot of these deposits are pretty economical? Is that a good allows for a number of these deposits to be economic going forward at 1650?
Not really.
No.
Not really. I mean, and that's pretty. I mean, that's a pretty optimistic price. I think realistically, I'd use 15. So, because we're guessing anyway, right?
Yeah, we are.
So I want some room for a mistake.
Brent, I do want to ask you this. At the moment, what are you focused on? Yeah, because you can't come and see us. We can't travel. Now, you would travel all the time. Has this COVID? Obviously, you're not traveling as much. Are you driving your wife mad? And are you traveling at all? What's life for Brent Cook like at the moment?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen the wife for months. I don't know what happened to her. This is the longest I haven't been on an airplane for at least 30 years, at least. Wow. Pre-COVID, Joe and I visited 33 prospects. This year I've been to probably 7 in Idaho, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. Joe's been to probably 5 in British Columbia and 1 in Ontario. But yeah, it's really slowed us down. Fortunately, we've got contacts all over the world we've worked with. So we all keep in touch. And if there's something that comes up out in Africa, we'll call someone or email someone who's, probably knows the project or the people or can give some sort of comment.
Right. What about Australia for our industry at the moment? What's your view on us Aussies at the moment? You lived here for 6 years. I know that you had a view on the Pilbara. We've actually got De Grey Mining presenting today, who've got their Hemi deposit that just keeps growing and growing. Has that surprised you to the upside?
Yes. A number of the discoveries in Australia kind of surprised me, and because for the most part they're deep, covered, or something that you didn't expect. I mean, I knew Chalice. I met Chalice at.
Don't talk to me about Chalice. Oh.
So I met Noosa. I met them in Noosa 2 years ago, I guess, and was very impressed. But the project that they hit on was like their 3rd or 4th tier project.
Yeah.
There's a surprise, a complete surprise, and man, that just really rocked.
Did you invest?
A little bit, not enough.
I didn't,
and I'm afraid I sold out too early as well. But anyway.
Yeah, that has been extraordinary. And Alex Dorsch, he's a young man that's just done extremely well. Do you think is it luck or good judgment?
I think it's good judgment. I mean, you look at how he's run the company before that discovery, and he turned projects in Canada over for cash. He kept his budget low, kept everything down. He was in the right place. He trusted his geologists to go out and actually he gave them the latitude to go out and do what they want to do, and it worked. So he there's a hell of a lot of credit, and his whole team.
Are you looking at Victoria at the moment, Brent? Because there's a number of, I mean, Victoria for a long time was a bit in the doldrums, and of course we all know that Western Australia is a very good jurisdiction for gold. We've got a number of them presenting here. I mean, we've got companies all over Australia and obviously internationally as well. The Victorian goldfields have had a bit of a renaissance and extraordinary. I mean, if you go back in history, Kirkland Lake Gold, before it became Kirkland Lake Gold, they couldn't find the gold. And that goes back to your comment earlier about you've got to understand the structure of the geology.
Yeah, that discovery, the Swan, I think it was, certainly rocketed and changed everyone's perspective on Victoria goldfields. Again, that is a very unique geologic setting. It's going to be really hard to find another one of those. And to find it, you've got to understand what the depth of formation, the metallurgical association, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of companies in Victoria who really don't, the ground isn't the right place. There's a few that are. I mean, in my opinion, GBM and Novo on that project they've got, that's in the right place. We'll see if they can find anything. Right. But there's a lot of gold in Victoria, and a lot of picks have been broken over the centuries looking for more. So it's a tough geologic environment.
What would you say, we're going to finish up in a moment or so, what would you say to people that are listening right now? And we talked about tips of the trade, we've talked about geology. We've got a number of companies that are presenting today. I'm always passionate about saying to people, you've got to go and talk to management. Do you think, for investors, give me the 3 top tips from Brent Cook? Let's take away from news releases, but your 3 top tips for those people that are not geologists out there. How can they best look at this industry and do the best they can, not being an economic and an exploration geologist like your good self, apart from, of course, signing up to explorationinsights.com?
That's probably a damn good idea. No, I think probably number one is find someone who knows the industry you can trust. That's going to get you ahead of 90% of the crowd.
Okay.
After that, I think it's worthwhile. Go to a company's website. Are they giving you all the information in a way that's somewhat understandable? Are the cross sections, etc.? And if you can talk to management, have them explain what they're looking for, what it's going to look like in future news releases. How do we know if you're actually succeeding or not? And what do you anticipate the CapEx and mining costs and tons and grade to have to, the cost input have to be, is going to be. Therefore, what is the tons and grade you're looking for going to have to be? You know what I mean? Here's your tons and grade, and here's your costs. They need to understand both of those things to know what makes money and what doesn't.
Right. And
that should be, they should explain that in a sense that you come away thinking, okay, now I know what they're doing and what I need to watch for as future news releases come out.
But you also talked about, what was the curve that you called it, the something, begins with L curve?
Oh, the Lassonde curve, yeah.
The Lassonde curve.
You can look at that and see where you are on the curve.
Yeah.
But as things start going up the curve, you got to be more and more careful to watch for what's wrong. I think metallurgy and metallurgical recovery, that's a big issue. That can kill a project so fast.
Why?
Well, if you can't recover the metal, you can't make any money. And that's what metallurgy is all about.
The technology these days, though, is a lot better for metallurgical recovery, isn't it? Is that improved?
It's improved, but still, if you've got, let's say you've got tiny, tiny particles of gold trapped inside quartz, and you can't get it out. Or to get it out, you've got to crush it so fine that the cost of making it into a powder is just too much for the amount of gold that's in there.
Got it.
Or if the gold is tied up in a metal like arsenopyrite, that gets much, much more expensive to get out because you've got to oxidize it. Basically, you've got to turn it to rust.
Why do you have to do that?
To get the gold out. Otherwise, it's stuck in there with the arsenic and sulfide. And so you've got to separate that.
Okay.
To do that takes a lot of energy.
Right.
Whereas if you've got a deposit that Mother Nature has already turned all the iron to rust, that's been done, so it's much easier to get the gold out.
And my final question to you is: are you interested in the Australian area as a whole? Like, what's your favourite jurisdiction?
Australia.
Yeah. Well, are you just saying that because you're chatting to me? But no, seriously.
I would rank it right up there for sure.
Would you? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Andes are great. Africa, I'm losing. I think is going the wrong direction. The Tethyan Belt of Rocks, which runs from, call it Serbia down into Turkey, there's some good potential in there. A little more difficult to work there. Scandinavia is geologically good and politically really good. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much open to almost anywhere.
Yeah, we had a company called Matador Mining that presented at our previous virtual gold conference, and they're up in. Oh, they're going to kill me because I've forgotten where they are. But they are up off Newfoundland.
Yeah, a lot of action in Newfoundland for sure.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot going on up there at the moment. Do you like that as a jurisdiction?
As a jurisdiction, yeah. As it's not as easy to find a coherent gold deposit there as people seem to think. In mining gold or any metal, really, you want continuity so that you walk 25 meters away or step out 25 meters, the ore is still more or less there. A lot of these things in Newfoundland, very erratically distributed pieces of gold. So you it's a hit and miss when you drill. So you've got to drill real tight. It's difficult. I mean, it's not that different from the Victoria Goldfields,
right?
Indigo and Ballarat. Those are tough ones.
Yeah, but you see, we're really smart down here in Australia, so they'll make it work.
Okay.
Brent Cook, it's been absolutely delightful to chat with you today because I know, luckily, you're not on a plane because normally trying to get a hold of you is impossible. So I have to thank COVID for actually keeping you in one spot so we can have a chat. I really hope that you can come out for our live event in October this year, but that's all dependent on our borders being open. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, Brent Cook from Exploration Insights, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you want to hear more about what Brent's doing, go to explorationinsights.com, sign up to the newsletter, and you'll get a lot more information. Thanks so much, Brent.
You're welcome. Glad to do it.
ABC Bullion, the Australian bullion company. Trading since 1972, ABC Bullion is Australia's largest independent bullion dealer and precious metals depository. Fully insured and verified by independent audit. ABC Bullion offers a range of proprietary investment products and storage solutions and Australia's first gold and silver accumulation plan. ABC Bullion.